Yeah, welcome Transfer Insiders. Big news. Arsenal fans, you're going to love this one. According to Jacob Steinberg of The Guardian, which is a very reliable source, Arsenal are reportedly closing in on a deal for Declan Rice and are expected to pay over £100 million. That's including add-ons. Declan Rice looks like he's on his way from Arsenal. Sorry, it's from West Ham to Arsenal.
Huge, isn't it?
Massive.
Because not only
That's
is it huge...
statement.
Exactly. It's not only huge for what Declan Rice brings on the pitch. You know, on the pitch, he's an elite player who is so proven in the Premier League and will rejuvenate that Arsenal midfield. But the other thing that it does, it changes Arsenal Football Club. It's been a long time since Arsenal have made a signing. In fact, I'll just let you quiz me earlier. I'll give you a quiz.
Go on.
Name the last time Arsenal signed a player that the rest of the footballing world wanted.
Ozil.
So that was age. That was.
See, you thought you get me. Bang.
No, but I'm not necessarily sure that's correct.
A big one.
I was thinking Aubameyang. To be totally honest, I was thinking. Did he say that in your ear? I was thinking Aubameyang.
He did not say it in my ear.
I was thinking Aubameyang.
Aubameyang then won, yeah. But I know what you mean, though.
But
this is
good
big.
few years.
No, and not just that, it's the money.
Yeah.
Remember, Arsenal were that, quite stingy. Remember the Suarez fiasco of playing an extra pound? Was it 39.1 or something? Like strength stupid like that. This is them going big.
Maybe
this is them
Kroenke,
saying, we finished second and we want to win it.
Maybe Kroenke has wised up to the fans.
Wow.
I think a lot of his teams in the States, even the Denver Nuggets, apparently are about to win something significant.
But yeah, they're about to win the NBA championship. What do you mean something significant? The biggest thing you can win in NBA.
But his teams are winning apart from Arsenal, and therefore maybe he's decided to.
It's massive. Honestly, it's massive. You know who's going to be really happy about this? Let's get him on right now. Harry Symeou, from Chronicles of a Gooner, who was doing a fantastic rollout in Istanbul as well. It's a shame we didn't get to meet each other, but both of us very busy. Come on, react to it. React to this. Arsenal closing in on Declan Rice, over 100 million quid.
Well, it's great news. It's great news. You know, he's the one that Arsenal fans have been looking at from the back end of last season. There was a lot of speculation. Arsenal fans have been panicking around the fact that this hasn't really moved far forward over the last few weeks. But as Alex Crook pointed out earlier on the show, the window's not even open yet. So people do need to just chill out a little bit. But you do feel like the timing with this one is important, because what Arsenal did really well last summer was get their business done nice and early, get the players involved in the pre-season, give them time to embed in, give them time to settle down. They had a great pre-season, and then they started the Premier League campaign with 5 wins on the spin. And that set the tone for what was a much improved season for Arsenal. So you feel like the timing is key. But also with Declan Rice, given there are probably going to be other clubs interested, the fact that Arsenal are in this position now where they've come off the back of a great season, people are looking at them as serious contenders. They've made a statement, in my opinion, by even going into the race for Declan Rice and saying, look, we can pay £100 million for a midfielder if we think he's the right man. I just think it's brilliant. And I think there's been a lot of names linked with Arsenal over the past couple of weeks, but I think it is very much one at a time. Let's get the business done. There's priorities. Declan Rice is at the top of that priority list. And if Arsenal can make that signing, it'll be a great start to the summer, I think.
How significantly will this elevate your midfield? It's looking like Granit Xhaka goes. Is that the upgrade that you were hoping for? So the midfield would look like what?
Man, that's like going from a Fiat Panda to a Ferrari.
But what's the three? So it suddenly becomes Thomas Partey, Odegaard, and Declan Rice.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a title-winning midfield, isn't it?
It's incredible. And then you add that, what they've got up front, of Martinelli, Saka, and Jesus, and Jesus would have been playing another season with those two as well. Pfft, mate,
gosh, it's
scary.
It's a very good midfield. The only thing I suppose where they would need a little bit of strengthening would be at the back to make sure that it's not replacing Saliba. Is that what you're hoping for, Harry?
Yeah, of course. They need to strengthen in other areas as well. And that's why I was in kind of two minds as to whether or not Arsenal would really push the boat out and go beyond the 100 million mark for anybody. They're great. They're going to do it, it looks like. But, you do feel like there are other areas in the team that need addressing. There's been lots of talk about Moises Caicedo as well. I still, at this moment in time, as we sit here, find it difficult to believe that Arsenal are going to be able to land Rice and Caicedo in the same summer, given what that's going to cost and the fact that they still need to do work elsewhere. But yeah, the back line is an area in which they need to improve. But the really key thing about Declan Rice is not only is he a brilliant sort of holding midfield player, he can play as that 8 as well. He can do that box-to-box role. And in the past, you'd lose Thomas Partey and you didn't have that direct replacement. Granit Xhaka in the past, when he's played there, couldn't really do that role to the same level, hence why he was moved further forward. He did brilliantly there. But Arsenal, I think, come unstuck for a number of reasons. Thomas Partey's form going off, and there wasn't really much Arteta could do to change it. He could put Jorginho in there, but it wasn't quite the same in terms of physical presence and in terms of bulking up in that sort of really key central area. So I think Declan Rice being able to play a multitude of positions in midfield is a big thing as well. And that's what makes it such a good signing.
The only issue, look, it's a small one, but it's one that I think Arteta needs to address, still is the strength and depth, though, because it still is a swap for a swap. It's potentially Xhaka out and it's Declan Rice in. Off the bench is still a problem. So that's going to be issue. It's going to be interesting to see what they do, because as you said there, Harry, you spend 100 million on Declan Rice, you're not going to get a Moise Caicedo for 80 million. You're not going to spend nearly 200 million on your midfield. So strength and depth surely is a question mark as well, because I almost feel like that's where you fell off at the back end of last season.
Yeah, but I think what we found with Mikel Arteta over the last couple of seasons is that when we talk about strength and depth, we always think about numbers, right? Do you have 2 or 3 players in some instances that can play in every single position? Arteta doesn't look at it necessarily that way. He looks at it as, if I've got a versatile group, I can shift things around, I can change things. And when you look at some of the signings he's made, I think you can really see that coming through. Ben White, for example, can play centre-back, but can play right-back. Tomiyasu, the same. Jakub Kivior, who came in as a centre-back, has been playing at left-back at the back end of the season. I think versatility is a really, really big thing. And so it doesn't necessarily mean you need the biggest squad in the world, but you need to be able to shuffle the pack at times and it not be too much of a problem. Strength in depth is so important. We've seen it with Manchester City, of course. But I don't think Arsenal are in a position yet where they're going to go and sort of have 50, 60 million pound players sitting on the substitutes bench. KSE, for all the good work they've done over the last couple of years, I don't think are willing to go that far. I still think that there is a limit. They've talked recently about wanting the club to return to a self-sustaining model. So you feel like the investment at some point or another is going to slow down. But it looks like, fingers crossed, it's not going to be this summer.
And what are you thinking, Harry, regarding next season? Do you think that you can actually launch a serious and sustained bid for the league, or do you think that City is just going to be uncatchable?
It's really, really difficult, because when you sort of slow down at the back end of the season for a number of reasons, which we've been over 1,000,001 times, and Manchester City at that point can really put their foot down on the accelerator, it's quite disheartening, isn't it? Because you feel like you can never beat them. They're treble winners and deserve to have all the accolades at the moment. You know, they're a fantastic team, a wonderful footballing side. There's no question about that. But you got to believe that you can mount a challenge. You got to believe that you can push them again. And for Arsenal, it's about first, before maybe kicking on, it's about sustaining. Arsenal were much more consistent in the season that's just finished than they had been for years. Can they sustain that level and then push on from that? Because if you can't sustain in the first place, then you can't progress. And to sustain is going to be a difficult task in its own right, I think, this season, because of the fact that they've got Champions League football. They're no longer in a position where they can play a weekend game and then make 5 or 6 changes in midweek in Europe and still get by. That's not going to be the case in the group stages of the Champions League like it was in the Europa. So I think Arsenal are going to have an issue sustaining first and foremost. If they can do that, great. But I'm not sitting here saying, well, with a couple of pieces, we're definitely going to overtake Manchester City. I don't think any club in the world can say that they're going to definitely challenge Manchester City if they continue in this vein. But, you know, there might be changes there. There may be a few players leaving. That might change the dynamic. What happens after you win a treble? Does that change your mentality? I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, aside from sort of Declan Rice being a statement purchase, and that's exactly what he is, by the way, statement. Like, this is it. We're serious for next season. He's a leader. He's a leader. He comes into the club. It's one thing everyone's maybe pointed the finger at Arsenal, like, where are the leaders at the club? Although I think there are there. Some maybe people don't think that.
He's
Declan
also
Rice
a winner
is a captain. Now. He's a winner. You're right. He comes with that winning mentality. He's someone that knows the Premier League. It's not like he has to come in and settle in. He knows the club from London. He knows the area. Honestly, it's a perfect signing. It's a perfect signing. And some will point the finger and say, look, the money's ridiculous. I don't think Declan Rice personally is worth 100 million. But I'm not paying for him. He's not worth 100 million. Well, it's not 100 million pounds
on the scale of footballers, he certainly is. Like when you think about what certain footballers go for now, when you look at what's going on around him, he is definitely one of the most sought after players around. I think he's potentially elite when you think about where his career could go. And when you buy a player as young as he is, you're also paying a premium for the potential.
You know what, this shocks me. You know, as a Liverpool fan, This shocks me, if I'm honest with you.
Well, because you think that your club should be making this sort of signing?
I can't believe that we're not in the market for these type of players. We've seen Jude Bellingham go to Real Madrid, a player that Liverpool's heavily linked with for the last couple of years, to the point where I was convinced. Remember all the loving that we got from Trent and Jordan Henderson, and you almost thought it was done because of these little Instagram posts. Jude Bellingham's gone to Real Madrid. Okay, Declan Rice, who I think is the perfect replacement for a Jordan Henderson type. Different type of players, but I think Declan can come into that fold. He's going for 100 million. And look, I think Alexis McAllister is going to be great, but statement signings, Real Madrid and Arsenal have made, and Liverpool have just gone here, bang, Alexis McAllister.
Yeah, and bearing in mind that the club that you're talking about here, Arsenal, they were already ahead of you. So you're playing catch-up on them. They're the team that finished second in the league. They're the team that launched a serious and sustained bid for the league. They're the team that are in the Champions League. And now, talk about strengthening when you're already strong compared to Liverpool. They've gone one step further. They've now signed Declan Rice, while you've signed a good player, but certainly a less inspiring player than Declan Rice.
Yeah, and sometimes that's what it is as well. It's that, isn't it? Inspiring. I think McAllister's going to do well for Liverpool, but it isn't the same type of buzz. Arsenal fans reading that are going to go crazy tonight.
You over the moon, Harry, with this?
He is. Harry's got this kind of face where you feel like he's not over the moon, but he is. He's over the moon, trust me.
No, I am over the moon. I'm delighted with it. I think it will be a great acquisition if and once it gets over the line. I think it's about what you were talking about there, just about clubs like, moving for these players and making statement signings. I think for Arsenal this summer, it's very much about striking while the iron's hot. They performed much better last season. They went up a level. They earned lots of admirers for not just the league position, but the way they went about their football. The atmosphere within the ground, the togetherness, the unity that you can really feel at Arsenal Football Club. And it's a very, very attractive place to be. I heard you guys earlier talking about the London factor as well, which maybe plays a part in this too. But, this is a really, really good time for Arsenal to be able to sell themselves to some of the best players in the Premier League and elsewhere. And if they don't do that this summer off the back of a significant improvement, then when are they going to do it? So I think that this window is key, because the fact that they've performed so well has opened the door to players that maybe were unattainable for Arsenal 12, 18 months ago.
Do you think, Harry, last one here, and I appreciate coming on as always, my man, do you think there are bigger problems ahead for Arsenal when it comes to wages and salaries? I read somewhere that Reece Nelson potentially wants 100 grand a week and Arsenal might be giving it to him. Saka, we know, look, his money elevated by tenfold, and he deserves that. I think he's a fantastic young player. But do you almost feel like there's going to be some players knocking on your manager's door, say, 1 second, wait a minute, he's on that, why am I not on anything near that? Do you think that's coming?
Well, the player that you mentioned there, Reece Nelson, and Eddie Nketiah, who got a contract last summer for around about 100 grand a week as well, were two players who were coming to the end of their contracts. So when they're out of contract, you have to do something that entices them to stay at your club above anybody else's. Now, I can probably sit here now and tell you that I reckon in 2 years, neither of those two will still be at Arsenal Football Club. They've signed up on long-term deals, in my opinion, to protect their value so that the club can move them on if they want to and do so for some money coming in. Arsenal have been bad sellers for a number of years. And what they're doing now is taking steps to protect themselves in that sense. With regards to the wages and all of that becoming a problem later down the line, I actually think Arsenal have planned this out really, really well. And I think they've known that this was coming. They knew, because a number of their players that have come in the last 3 or 4 seasons had clauses in their contracts that their wages would bump up once Arsenal qualified for the Champions League. So they knew this was coming, and that's why they've been so key to cut ties with the likes of Aubameyang, Ozil, Sead Kolasinac, another one who was on massive money in comparison to what he was doing. They were happy to terminate those contracts in order to make space within the wage structure to cope with this. And they know that the wage structure has to change. If you want to compete at the very top, it has to change. That's just the way it goes. And with Champions League football returning, the Emirates Stadium packed to the rafters every single week, the club's prize money increasing dramatically from finishing second in the Premier League. I think the club have played this perfectly. It's taken a bit of time, but they're in a position now where they're ready to invest that little bit more and go that extra mile to be competitive right at the top level.
I bet I know what Harry's going to do right now. He's going to go and put on the barbecue. Yeah. That's every time he does. Anytime he gets any good Arsenal news, the barbecue goes on, regardless of what time it is in the evening. Harry, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very, very much. Arsenal fans, want to hear from you. 03717 223344.